The Baldwin County Public School System, considered one of the finest educational environments in the entire state of Alabama, has a history beginning in the latter part of the 18th century, when, as records indicate, Alabama's first public schoolhouse was built in the North Baldwin County community of Tensaw in 1799. And at that time, nearly 10 years prior to Baldwin being organized as a county, the area remained geographically expanse. Agriculture served as king, and family farms dotted every section of the county. And in this era of extremely limited highway systems, individual communities built their own respective public schoolhouses, with the Board of Education supplying teachers to provide instruction. In the early part of the 20th century, the Baldwin County Public School System boasted over 80 separate school districts, each with their own individual public schoolhouse. And as time progressed, marked with improvements in transportation and engineering, numerous school districts were consolidated into nearby areas, leaving us today with very few of the original and historic public schoolhouses which distinguished Baldwin County, beginning in 1799, as the birthplace of Alabama's first public schoolhouse. This documentary, commissioned by the Honorable County Commissioners of Baldwin County and honorable members of the Baldwin County Board of Education, seeks to illuminate these few remaining and historic original public schoolhouses in an effort to pay tribute to one of the finest public school systems in Alabama. Located in South Baldwin County, Summerdale School has a rich history beginning in the early 20th century and has been providing an opportunity for educational enlightenment to the young students of the community ever since. Summerdale's first school took form in 1907 with only 5 pupils and was held in the community's Masonic Hall. The educational facilities in Summerdale improved in 1913 when a 3-room building was constructed with a large hall. This facility was remodeled as enrollment increased. As Marlow, Underwood, also known as Yupon, Sonora, and Greenwood schools consolidated into Summerdale, it became apparent that more space was needed. A 3-room brick schoolhouse with a cafeteria was later constructed in 1928, with another room added to each wing 10 years later. Presently, the Summerdale School serves kindergarten through 8th graders, with an enrollment of approximately 500 students. As many improvements were made to the original structure, leaving us today with a fine schoolhouse which Summerdale students still attend, as well as remaining an important landmark in the South Baldwin County community.
Summerdale School was one of the standard design schools, and it was just an exact replica of Loxley School. When I first knew much about Summerdale School, it was a 12th grade school. But at about World War II time, or shortly thereafter, the high school section was sent to Foley, and it remained as a 1 through 9 school. It remained as a junior high school during all of the years that I knew it, and then it was later reduced to an elementary, and a little after my time. It was built about 1927 when all the rest of them were, and I'm sure that there were at least 3 other local schools that were consolidated into it. There's several of the old school sites around. Marlow for one. Roy Holmes was the principal who had the longest tenure that I can remember there. He graduated from Daphne State Normal School, about 1936 or 7, and after a brief stint at Spanish Fort School, he and his wife, whom he met there at Spanish Fort School, moved over to Summerdale, and he stayed there the rest of his life. He too turned down numerous chances for promotion. I personally offered him the principalship of Foley High School. I thought he would make a great principal, but he thought it over. He had developed lots of interest. He had become mayor of the town of Summerdale, and like Mr. Taylor at Robertsdale, he just wanted to be Roy Holmes at Summerdale. The other aspects of the building are much as I've already mentioned about the standard schools. The auditorium was turned into a gymnasium, or at least it served as a gymnasium. We were able to play basketball there. It had one of those reduced size courts in it, of course. I don't remember anything in particular about Summerdale that would stand out from any of the others, except my friendship with Roy Holmes that predated both of our careers, and then we worked so closely together in education. It was just as if Roy and I were part of the same school. I knew his students before they came to my school, and he knew my students after that. It was just part of a school system. 6 miles away. We had a tornado to go through there when school was not in session, and damaged some of the buildings, but not badly.
Were there any hurricanes during the time?
Hurricanes do damage to our school roofs, and especially to the flat ones. When we were building those flat roofs, we did it for economy purposes. Our architects told us that we can seal a flat roof better than we can a roof that has some slope to it. But we learned in the hurricanes and tornadoes that in the field of physics, there is an effect known as the Bernoulli effect. And it says that if a fluid is passing across the top of a flat surface, it creates a low pressure area on that top. It's the same reason that the baseball curves. Same reason that you can make a baseball curve. And it's the same reason that an airplane wing can be so contoured to have lift. The upper part of the wing of an airplane has a greater distance from the leading edge to the rear. In other words, it's curved in such a way that it is greater than the flatter distance from the leading edge to the trailing edge of the wing under the bottom, so that the air has to travel faster over the top than to the bottom, and it has that lifting effect. And these flat buildings, minor winds can blow across the top and just lift. And even if they don't lift it off, they lift it enough to make cracks in it. And we learned, to our sorrow, that we had to put sloping roofs on our school building. The county courthouse here is a perfect example. It was designed by the same architect that was doing our architecture at the time, and naturally it had a flat roof. Couldn't keep it from leaking. And when it was renovated, we have a false roof on it. You look at it now, and it looks like it has a nice roof. The new hospital in Bay Minette has the same thing. It looks like a big roof over it, but it's not. It's just a sloping edge that the eye can see from the ground. But it's enough to force the wind into an upward direction and keep it from lifting that flat roof off.
I was a student here at Summerdale School from 1964 to 1973. Both my parents went to Summerdale School, as well as my brother, several cousins, uncles and aunts, and so the family, a lot of my family went to this school throughout the years. The time that I was here, mainly in the 60s, the school became integrated when I was in the 6th grade at Summerdale School. I remember the first African-American students that came to this school, and I still see all three of them occasionally in the neighborhood and talk to them when I see them, and they remember coming as well, and it was obviously a lot more traumatic for them coming into a school of a different race than it was for us to have them here, but it was something that sticks out in my mind as being a very important event. We might have been late as far as the country goes in integrating, but I thought it went fairly smoothly, and we continue to have children and grandchildren of those students that go here today. Many of the people that I went to school with, my friends, their children went here as well, and have a few that are here right now, children of my fellow students. So that's kind of unique. I also work with 3 teachers that I went to school with here that we were within a year apart in class, and they now, one is my a teacher, one is my bookkeeper, and one is an aide. And we have fun working together and telling old stories back when we were in school. When I was at this school, we were a first grade through 9th grade school, and I went here all 9 years, and left from here and went to Foley and graduated from there. Each grade level only had 1 class, so there were probably 25 to 35 students, depending on the grade level, students in this school. So when we left to go to Foley in 1973, it was a traumatic experience for us to go from a class of 30 to a class of several hundred, and that still goes on today. Many of our students in the small community schools struggle when they get to the high school because they're used to a small-time school, and they just seem to feel lost in a big school. And so we are still fighting that battle today to try to cut back on the dropout rate and things of that nature that come about because kids don't feel as comfortable in a large school as they do when they were here at Summerdale. Many of the friends that I went to school with here at Summerdale are still living in this area, and I see them occasionally. My classmates, best friend Tony Dawkins and Marlon Gill and Bennett Stewart and Danny Yance and David Freeman. I still see them around. I see them at the ball games when we go on Friday nights. Several ladies, of course, too, and I see them occasionally. One called me yesterday that works at a local store, talking to me about donations, and so it's the people. A lot of the people that I went to school with are still here, working in the community, and that's I think that's kind of unique, and it's fun to get to see them. And I met one the other night. I hadn't seen her in 30 years. She came to Grandparents' Day, and she was a grandparent of one of my students, and I hadn't seen her in so long, and she had moved to Michigan, and that was just great seeing people that you haven't seen in so long and that you shared a time of your life with. It was so important to you, like being in this school. The things I remember most about Summerdale School was a small community feeling. We had, like I said, 1 class per grade level, and each year, each class was responsible for putting on a play on the stage in the gymnasium. Each month, a class would have a month to prepare their play, and at the end of that month, they would do their play. First grade would start, then 2nd grade, then 3rd grade, and so on. And so each year we would have 9 plays per year put on by each grade level. And first play I was ever in, I was a carrot. So I played a carrot and Peter Cottontail. And I didn't get a big part, not much of a speaking part. Now, carrot can't say much, but it was something that stuck out in my mind that was very memorable. In my 9th grade year, my friends and I thought we were too big and too cool to be in a play. And my best friend's aunt was the teacher at that time, Miss Marie Patrick, was our 9th grade teacher, wonderful teacher. And we went to her and said, you know, we think that's a little bit too babyish for us. We would love to participate, but we have an idea. And we went to her and asked her, could we put on commercials in between each set? And she thought it was a good idea. So we created our own commercials. And when they would change sets from one act to the next, they would close the curtain and we would come out on the front of the stage and do a commercial. And the kids, I remember them just howling and clapping and laughing at our commercials. And they were bored to death with the play, but they loved the commercials. And so that was something I remember that will always stay with me. And it's, you know, things change as the years go by, and schools have to change with that. And the area that I'm sitting right here used to be the stage in the old gymnasium. It's not a gym anymore. As you can see, it's a library. And so we hate to see things like that go, but it's a wonderful library, and we have a new stage now and a new gymnasium. And so I hope that we are able to create memories for our students in that new stage, in that new gym, like I had when I was here. I think that's very important. Many stories come to mind, and many don't. I know as a child, I grew up about 5 blocks from here, walked to school every day for 9 years to this school, or rode my bike with my best buddy. And back then, they would let you leave campus to go eat lunch. And my parents, both of them worked for a living, and so I would hop on my bike. When the other kids would go to the cafeteria, I would hop on my bike and ride home, and I had a ritual. I would get there and I would cook a bowl of soup and make a sandwich, and I'd eat that soup and that sandwich and be back before they were out of the cafeteria, because I didn't want to miss playtime. If you finished your food in the cafeteria, you could go outside and play. It was like having an extra recess time during the day, and I wasn't about to miss an extra recess time. So I would ride as fast as I could to the house, cook my soup, eat my sandwich, and I was back here before they got out. And that was a very memorable experience. During that time, there were only 2 buildings on this campus, the main building that we're in now and the cafeteria, and that was it. There might have been a little custodial shed out back, but now we have 7 buildings on campus, and it's a lot different. We are a pre-K through 8th grade, 10 grade levels, so it's a little different, not much. We're a little bit bigger than we were back then. We have about 3 classes per grade level, but it hasn't been a huge change at Summerdale School. It's still students in the community coming to a small town school, and they just hate to leave here. When they leave, they just hate going to another school. It's just that special of a school. The opportunity that I had to come back to Summerdale is something that is hard to explain. When I got out of high school, the last thing on my mind was being a teacher. That was not school was not my favorite thing to do when I was in high school. My grades showed it, and I worked for the Navy for 16 years. And as the Navy started cutting back, I saw an opportunity to go back to school and get my teaching degree, which I did. And I came here and interviewed at Summerdale, and they hired me right off the bat, and it has been the best experience of my life. I had an opportunity to teach here for 6 years, 3 years as a 4th grade teacher, 3 years as a 6th grade teacher, and then I was lucky enough to get the assistant principal job of all the schools in Baldwin County right here. And I was the assistant principal for 2 years, and was very fortunate that the principal position came open this past year, and I got that position. So this is my first year as principal. It is a very bizarre experience, having been here as a child and as a teacher and now as a principal, but it's very, very rewarding, and the students, it's just, you know most of them by name, and they just love to see you, and they still run up and hug you, and that's just something that don't seem like you can get anywhere, but it's a great experience. Nobody run up and hugged me when I worked for the Navy, so it wasn't the same. So this is a very neat experience, working with many wonderful people. I think we have the best staff in Baldwin County. Probably everybody says that, but I believe they're right here at Summerdale School. And we do a lot of wonderful activities, a lot of sports at Summerdale that kids in the past may not have had an opportunity to do. And so it's been a great experience to have football and basketball and soccer and track and volleyball, all those sports. And it's been a great experience. One story I remember when I was in school was when I would go home for lunch every day and come back. We would play outside until the teacher would make us go into class. And one day we were out there playing, rolling around and wrestling in the ground, as we often did. And I just felt the biggest stinging all over me, and I just didn't know what was going on. And I got up and pulled my shirt up, and I had just thousands of ants all over me. And I just remember people just slapping me and beating me, and I think they hurt me worse than the ants did, trying to get the ants off of me. But it was it's something that I always remembered, and I don't think I was too scarred from it, but it was it was a funny experience. I spent a lot of time in the principal's office as a student, not always for good things, and I've gotten my share of spankings throughout the year, and I'll never forget one day when I was outside playing at PE, and I remember a little boy coming jumping up on my back, and I threw him off on the ground and hit him or did something to him real mean, and he ran into the front door of the school, told on me. As I came into the front door, I didn't know that he had told on me, and this arm reached out from the principal's office, yanked me into the office, and he spanked me about 4 or 5 times, and then he asked me, "Why did you do that?" So I always thought that was so funny that he spanked me first and asked me questions last, and I had the utmost respect for my principal at that time, and as I do today. He was a wonderful man. He was the principal here for 35 years, Mr. Holmes, and that was spankings were a little bit more. They happen a little bit more often than they do today. Let's put it that way. And today, as administrators, we have to make up our mind what type of punishment we use for students, and it's not always a proper thing to do anymore. Mr. Roy Holmes was my former principal while I was at Summerdale School. He was here for many years. In fact, he was my father's principal in the 1940s, as well as my principal up through my time here in 1973. Mr. Holmes wore many hats that a lot of principals do not have to do these days. He was not only the principal, but he was also a teacher. He taught 9th grade as well as running the whole school. He did not have an office staff. He was his own secretary, his own bookkeeper, and a teacher, principal, and he also coached sports. Something that it's hard for us to imagine today that somebody could do all of those jobs and still run a school effectively, but he seemed to do it. And he was also a community person. Mr. Holmes attended the same church that I attended my first 20 years. He was a deacon in our church, and he was just an upstanding citizen and a pillar of the community. And that's the way I'll always remember Mr. Holmes, and left a lot of good memories here at this school. One of the funny stories I remember when I was a student here was when we would come to school in the morning. Nobody would want to go in the building and go in the classroom. That may have been because the teachers didn't want us in there yet. I don't remember, but I know we wanted to be outside as long as we could. And so we would come up with different activities to keep us entertained as we got to school early. And some of us got here early because we walked to school or rode our bikes to school. And so one of my friends had the idea one day to bring a set of boxing gloves. And we would pair up out in front of the school each day and have challenges. And you could challenge somebody to box. And one of the, it was funny, just one of those things. But one friend of mine put on his gloves and challenged another boy, and they were boxing around, and he knocked him out. And he was out cold. And we were all looking around and kind of got scared, and because he wasn't moving. And we were all shaking him, and finally he just woke up and wondered why we were all staring at him. But I think we had to quit shortly after that. I think they made us quit because it's not something we could do today, obviously. We don't offer boxing in elementary and middle school, but it was funny during that time. I remember when I was a student here that we had what we call today Fall Festival. Back then it was just called Halloween. And the whole festival or Halloween party was held in this building. Each classroom in this building was a booth. And so you could walk up and down the classrooms and the hallways and go to each classroom for whatever booth they had in that classroom. And each teacher was responsible for having a booth open that year. And then everyone would come into the gym. This is where they would have the cakewalk. And the stage was where they had the haunted house. So you would enter the stage at stage left and would go in and work your way through the haunted house, and you would exit stage right. And I remember things like them sticking your hand in bowls full of spaghetti and telling you it was somebody's insides, and gross things like that just to try to scare you. And it was something that I always remember being a fun thing to do on Halloween, coming to the school to go through the booth and the haunted house. And also along with that, they'd also have hay rides outside, which are still popular today, but you don't see as often. And so fall festival or Halloween time was always a fun time at Summerdale School. This school has a lot of history. It dates back to 1907. We just celebrated our 100-year anniversary of this school. This is the third school building that has been used by Summerdale. The first two were between 1907 and 1927, and one of those being on this campus that burned down at one time. The current building that we're in was built in 1928. It's still used today for our offices. First and second grade are housed in this building, as well as the new library. A lot of history to this old building, but since then there's been a need to change and add on as we've moved through the years. This school has fluctuated from a high school to a middle school to an elementary school, back to a middle school again, back to an elementary school, and now to a middle school again. So it's been back and forth a lot, and we are now pre-K through 8th grade. We added a intermediate school building in the 1980s. Late 1990s, we added a kindergarten building to our campus. 1993, we added a middle school building when we brought the middle school back in 93, and we have outgrown it now. We have the second most portables in the county. And we have another middle school building that is under construction right behind this building that will be completed in March. And that will hopefully house all students and all teachers to where we can get rid of our portables for good, I hope. We also just completed a brand new gymnasium that we're very proud of that allowed us to convert this building into a library. And the new gymnasium, 15,000 square feet, has a stage, it has 5 offices, nice concession area, dressing rooms for PE, dressing rooms for athletics. We have a football field on our middle school campus here. Not all middle schools have that, and we had a wonderful donor in Miss Margie Snook. She was just wonderful to pitch in and help us out, her being a former student of this school. And we were able to build our football field with the lights and the stands and the scoreboard, and it really is a show place for us. And everybody that comes here comments about how wonderful our football field is, and even the Foley High School has used our field to practice some this year. And so we're really proud of that fact. We are in the process of building an athletic building next to the football field for dressing rooms and weight rooms, and we are doing that with donated funds. As we get the money, we are trying to build that, and we hope to have that done within this year. We have a new building under construction on our campus. It's the middle school building that will house our 7th and 8th grade students. I got to walk through it the other day. It's not completed yet, but it's a huge building. We're just tickled about it. It has 8 classrooms, 8 regular classrooms in it. It will have a science lab in it that will be unique. It will have an art room, also a kiln room to make pottery in that art room. We're excited about that as well. It will have a computer lab. It has an assistant principal's office in it, a counselor's office, and it also has a band room. And our band has been operating out of a trailer for 3 or 4 years, and so they're excited about the opportunity to have a band room to store their equipment and to practice, and without having to go outside and get wet to get to it. And we hope to be in our building by the spring, and it will be a great addition to our campus.
I remember my days here at Summerdale School. I can remember first grade, and I was real bashful. Our teacher was Miss Leela Lynn, and she would hold up cards with names on it, and if we could recognize like cat, dog, and so forth, we would hold the card. And I was so nervous I kept doing like this with my card, and she sent me in the cloakroom. I didn't mean to be bending it, but it was because I was bashful and nervous. So, but I thought it was a wonderful school. We had a lot of good teachers, and in the last year there was only 10 of us that graduated. It was 5 girls and 5 boys. And I used to know everybody here at school, and now I come visit, I don't know hardly anybody. This was in 1941, our graduating class, and the boys were Van Phillips, Leon Wallace, Frank Leitner, Victor Lissick, and Paul Shaw. And the girls were Grace Yantz Nelson, Bernice Rohrberg Riebeling, Josephine Underwood Frank, Lillian Lehman Conley, and myself, Margaret Mickelson Moore. Graduation was in our old auditorium, and one of our speakers was a Dr. Cleverdon that grew up in Summerdale, but now lived in Georgia. And there was only 10 of us, so it was a small class, but we all got real acquainted and really enjoyed each other. Now there's only 5 of us left. That was 1941. We were next to the last class that graduated here from Summerdale.
My folks moved to Alabama when I was 10 years old. I was in the 3rd grade, started the 3rd grade here. It was a whole lot different from a one-room school I came from in Oklahoma, I can remember that. But the first things I remember in the old days with the old pot-bellied stoves we had, not pot-bellied, but round cast iron stoves that heated each room. And the coal bins were out back by the outhouses. And most of the boys in the rooms would volunteer to go get coal to get out of class. I done that quite a bit. And that and each, as I've told some of them before, I can well remember when of course you didn't have the population you had now, but each room we had, I think, 8 teachers and a principal for 9 grades here. Mr. Holmes was the principal. He taught the 9th grade. He coached basketball, baseball, and soccer, as well as taught. And now, I don't know how many Mark has here now, probably 30 or 40 teachers, but the population has tripled and more so, I guess. Came here in 1940, latter part, right around Christmas, if I remember right, and finished 6 years here at 9th grade. I guess I went to Foley in the year of 47, I guess it was, 46 or 47. Yeah, we lived in the country about 6-7 miles out of town here, I guess, and the bus come back going, and I'd ride the complete route down towards Marlow and all the way back out on the back side over there. Pretty good loop. And going home, it was always the same way. I was late getting home in the afternoon. I remember that. Daddy always wanted me working, and I wasn't mad a bit about riding the bus. Played a little bit of basketball and a whole lot of soccer. That was the main thing out here where the football field is now. We played soccer, and we'd bang each other's shins up. A lot of times on miss the ball, we'd kick somebody. I think it was on purpose, but we played a lot of soccer. We were a small, as far as we got to the 9th grade, we were a small class, if I remember right. It wasn't about 15 or 16 of us, I remember right, something like that. Miss Carriage was bad about banging her ink bottle on the table, and somebody come up the bright alley and loosened the lid on it, so when she done like that, she got an ink bath. Don't call no names, but we wired her desk one time. One of the boys brought some copper wire that was real fine. Her chair had her round arms like this, the big wide type. We wound copper wire around the arms of her chair and pulled her. She couldn't sit. She went to sit down. She bounced about 3 times. So I think we were more aggravating than we were learning things. We would go out in the yard. We'd draw a circle, usually about 4 foot, 5 foot circle, And each person put 3, 4, 5 marbles in the circle. And you had a shooter, which is usually, I forget now what we call it, but it was a little larger than a regular marble. Everybody had their own shooter. And I forget who would go first, but everybody you try to knock, you would shoot till you didn't knock one. If you knocked one out, it was yours. And if you didn't go out, and your shooter stayed in, well, you was allowed to place another marble in its place and take it out so you wouldn't lose it. And then the next person would do that and go around the circle and just keep on till you were low on marbles or time to go in or recess was over. And go home with muddy knees, and toes of your shoes messed up. I had to wear shoes. I was tenderfooted. Most boys around here in summertime went barefooted. That was a thing. You know, the hallway here in the school had splinters in it. It was awful. And but I wore shoes. I was tenderfooted. It wasn't that many of us that played tops, but there were a few. But we done the same thing. We draw a circle, and the first man he'd throw his top. He'd have to line them up and throw it. And while it was spinning, the next person would try to hit it, and either hit the ground and make a spin and go and knock it out that way. If you couldn't hit it with a needle and knock it out, you'd spin and make your top go across while it was spinning and knock it out. And you had to get pretty good to do that. And that didn't last near as long as the marble playing, but we did. We done something that several of us, I forget now what it was, but she made us learn the Gettysburg Address at recess before we could go back out and play. Well, I was one of these hard-headed boys. I said, I ain't about to learn that. I missed several recesses before I learned to say it. And I still know what I think. But went, like I say, at least 6th grade, third through the 9th. And my 2 sons went to school here, and Mark is the youngest. He wound up teaching here and wound up with a principal job, which we're so proud of.
We had the coal room for our room. It was a real small little room. There was only 10 of us students, and it had been a coal room, and Miss Baker was our homeroom teacher. Well, we had to go outdoors to the bathroom, and that was cold weather, rainy weather, whatever. And in the 1st grade, I only got to go about a half a year because I had malaria. And so but I passed, and passed to the 2nd grade. Principal was Mr. Bennett, and we always had chapel programs back then. The first thing in the morning, we had chapel program, and had those seats like you have out front there, those old wooden chairs. And I can remember when he would read the Bible, he'd always have to rear up on his tiptoes. One of our boys that was in our class, Phillips, he was a gunner on a plane, and he got killed. I guess they got shot down. And then the other boy, Victor Lissick, he did make it out of the service and married, and then he used to visit sometimes back here.
Well, I reckon I started school here in 1930 and went through the 11th grade. Had to go the last year, had to go to Foley. And then, of course, Miss Leela McKinley was my 1st grade teacher. Lita Holloway was my 2nd grade teacher. And Mrs. Hadley was my 3rd grade teacher. Her husband was principal. And went on through. We had a lot of good teachers here back then. I don't know, of course, we had our old outhouse and had coal and the wood, old heaters. And, everything was kind of drafty back then. Had the old wood floors. If you went barefooted, you'd liable to get a splinter in it, your foot. And so, of course, we had a basketball team and a baseball team, softball. Roy Underwood was a teacher, and he was a basketball coach. And then after Mr. Bennett, Mr. Hal Hadley was principal, and he worked with the baseball. Well, in basketball, the first year we played here, we played Foley, and I think Foley beat us 52-0. And then we went to the tournament. We didn't play no more till the tournament, and we almost beat them, knocked them out of the tournament. In fact, we did beat them, and that was unusual. And so, but and then baseball, softball, we played Robertsdale and some of the other schools, but softball, I played catcher on that. No, I played pitcher on that team. Well, it's Mr. Edwards. One time it was Halloween, and we kept kidding him about we was going to do something to his place. And somebody did take his gate, big old gate, and put it across the road. And since I was one of them that teased him about it, I got called to the office. Of course, I had nothing to do with it, didn't know nothing about it.
Well, I started school here in the first grade, and I went through the 10th here. And then they had to move us to Foley. And then I went to college 1 year, to Troy State. And then I came back and I taught school here. I taught the second grade for 7 years. And I really enjoyed those little ones. And then I went back to school and finished, got my degree. And then I stayed home till I had 4 kids. And then I came back to teach, and I taught the 6th grade. But I really enjoyed my teaching, and I taught the 6th grade about 19 years. And then I taught the 4th grade 2 years, because they moved the 6th grade into the middle school, and I didn't want to teach the middle school. But anyway, I guess my best years were in 2nd grade. I really enjoyed those little ones. And we didn't have many conveniences then. We had to go outside to the bathroom, and we had to get cold and fix the fires. And I would be so interested in my students and working that I forget the fire, and it would go out, and then we'd get cold. So I'd have to start again, and we would get all kinds of scraps, papers, and things to start the fire again. And so but when I went back to the 6th grade, they had electric heaters or gas heaters. It wasn't as bad then. In the 2nd grade, I had mostly reading, writing, and a little bit of spelling, and arithmetic. And we didn't have a lot of complicated classes like they do now. And then, of course, in the 6th grade, I had all the subjects: math, science, reading, and social studies, I guess, and physical ed. And we had field trips in the 6th grade. I'd take them on field trips, and we studied Mexico, and we had the fiestas, and we all enjoyed those. It's a lot of work. Well, I remember in the second grade, when we went to the restroom, it was outside, and it was raining, and the yards were flooded, and we had to take off our shoes and socks to go to the restroom. And that was something. And well, I just really enjoyed the second grade because we would put on little cantatas and plays, and they were really interesting to work with. And then, of course, in the sixth grade, we had the fiestas, and in the PE classes, the girls would compete for prizes, President's Awards, and so on. And our main thing I remember is the trips we went on, and the fiestas, Mexican fiestas we did after we studied Mexico. Going to school here and then coming back to teach, I thought the children would remember me and not mind, but that didn't seem to bother them. They were real good. I enjoyed the little second graders, and of course when I taught sixth grade, I was much older, and they tried my patience, but I got the best of them. Mark Pumphrey, the principal now, was a student of mine in the sixth grade years back, and Mr. Holmes was my principal most of the time when I was teaching. He was real patient with me.
I came to Summerdale School when the schools were integrating, and I took Miss Alice McGowan's place, and the job was between two girls. One was from Mobile, and I was from Baldwin County. And so Miss Alice, the retiring lady, said that she would like for me to take her place because she knew me and she was familiar with me, so she wanted me to come. And of course I was delighted, and my mother worked here in Summerdale for many years on Wind Shed, and they knew me. A lot of the people knew me from that. I was a little girl on the shed, Mr. Wind Shed. And anyway, so when I first came here, Mr. Holmes was the principal, Roy Holmes, and he took care of things pretty well. He was a very good principal, and he was very firm, and which made my integration here at this school successful, and I enjoyed it. I did not ever feel that I was not part of the school. I always felt like I was part of the school and this family, because this school made me feel welcome, and the transition was pretty good. I never had any repercussions. I didn't think another thing about coming here when I did come here. So I've had a good journey at this school, and I've enjoyed the many children that I've worked with. Miss Alice made it that way, and her family and some of the other families from around here, they made me feel very welcome. And I don't recall any days that I felt uncomfortable. Some of the stories that I recall, one story in particular was with one day I had told the children we had milk and ice cream for snack, and I told the little boy, I said, if you don't do your work, you won't be getting ice cream today, so you will just be getting chocolate milk, because they love chocolate milk. And he said to me, he said, I'm going home, I'm going to tell my mother. I said, okay, go tell your mother. And so he came back the next day with his mother, and the mother said, did you tell my son that he couldn't have snack? And I said, yes, ma'am, I did. So she said, well, he's allowed to have snack. I said, yes, ma'am, he is. And his snack would be milk, chocolate milk. They love chocolate milk. So I said, and because he didn't obey and he didn't do what he was told, I asked him to do his work, and he was having problems trying to do it. So she said, well, I don't like that. So Mr. Holmes was a tall gentleman. He got up from behind the desk and he said, she said that he would get chocolate milk, and that is what he will get. I will back her 100%. And that was all it took. Those days, that's the way it was. And I had another little boy once that said to me, he said, Miss G, I said, yes. He said, Doug is not following the church covenant. His name was John. He's today he is a very renowned young man. He works for a newspaper. And I said, excuse me? He said, he's not following the church covenant. And I said, oh. I said, what is that? He said, thou shalt avoid all tattling, excessive anger, and backbiting. And gentlemen, and I'm telling you, I broke up with that. I had to get up and leave the classroom because it was so funny. I didn't let them see me with the humor, and everything. So anyway, I got up and I walked outside for just a minute, and I went straight to Mr. Holmes' office. I had somebody, to cover the room. I went to the office and I told Mr. Holmes, and we both just stood there, and they were just so intelligent. The children were and they were just full of life, full of things, and those were just great, great times. And we had a boy once, right in the middle of class, he goes, Miss G, I said, yes. He said, oh, I got something to tell you. In the morning time, we'd have sharing time. And I said, wait just a minute, let me get through with the lunch. I can't wait. And I said, well, son, could you just wait for just a minute? And he said, I just can't wait. He said, I need to tell you something. It's very important. I said, okay, just a minute. So I said, boys and girls, I said, just sit for a minute. I need to talk with him. So I went outside the door with him because I had to listen. It was important. He wanted to tell me something, and it was important that I listened. So I said, what is it? He said, Miss G, he said, my daddy went to jail last night. And I said, oh? He said, yes, ma'am. And I said, oh, he said, they said my daddy did something bad. And I said, well, and he told me what it was. And I said, well, I said, your daddy and your mother will take care of that. Today you're going to be safe here at school. You're here with me and your classmates, and so you're going to be safe. So let's let mom and daddy worry about that, and you worry about your studies. I said, I'm going to give you lots of love, and I said, and I want you to really concentrate on what you're going to do your best for me today. And that was all it took for that particular time, and they were just full of it, just full of funny, lively things. And if they had a problem, we'd share things and talk about it, and they were all right. Then I had another student once, he told me, he said, right in the middle of class, you guys, right in the middle of class, Miss J, I said, what? So-and-so mooned me last night. And I said, what? And I said, what? I didn't know what it was, at the time, I didn't know what it was. So I said, right in the middle of class, he says this. And I said, okay. So later on, there was another teacher here named Miss Ross and Miss Williams. So when we got together, I said, what is that? And they told me what it was, And the kids were all laughing. Well, I was naive. I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. So the other little kids said, I know what it means. I said, well, let's just don't worry about it if it was that funny, I think maybe we shouldn't discuss it in class. But another lady once came up and she said, this was when I first came. She said, Miss G, she said, you gave my children, my little girl, some problems in division last night, and I don't understand it. She said, now you got to remember, they just in 3rd grade. That's when I taught 3rd grade. And she said, they haven't had all this stuff yet. So I looked at her and I said, ma'am? She said, yeah. I said, have you ever, when you washed the children's socks, I said, did you just ever ask your children to pair the socks together? And she looked at me, she goes, yeah, I do that all the time. When I wash, I make them pair the socks and put them together so they can store them in the drawers. I said, well, ma'am, when you paired those two things together, I said, you were dividing then. And she, well, I never thought about it. I said, have you ever had a candy bar? You know, back there in those days, you could get the Hershey candy, and you could divide it equally among the students. I said, well, did you ever do that with your children, divide up what you had with them? She goes, yeah. She says, I said, well, that was dividing. Oh, she says, I'm so sorry. She said, I didn't realize that. I said, just trust us. You know, we may not do everything right, but as far as we know, we can do some things right. That was this man, he had a son and a daughter. And every time, we didn't have air conditioning, you know, or anything like that. It was hot in the rooms. We'd have the windows up, and the gnats would be in the windows, you know, because we didn't have any screens or nothing. We just put the windows up because it was hot. That was the way it was. And so when it was really, really hot like that, there was this man who had this fan, big fan. And all of us were saying, oh, I can't wait till he get in my room so I can get that big. He had this big fan that came off his farm. And we'd get to put the big fan and suck all that hot air out in the room. And so every time the teacher would look, we knew whoever we had, that teacher had, we were going to have them as well, because we didn't have any 2 second grades or 3 second grades or 4 second grades. We just had that one grade. So whoever, and by the way, we would have something like 32 to 30, 35 children in a classroom. And the children were pretty much like they were today, except for the parental involvement was a lot more, you know, involved and everything like that. But anyway, getting back to the story, the big fan was in the window, and we looked forward to having those children. When that big fan came, we just felt so cool and felt like we were just in heaven, you know. So one night we had a storm that came, and that big fan was in the window. And it was in, I believe it was in some teacher's room, another teacher's room, and the storm took out the fan. Well, needless to say, the next teacher that was going to get the fan, inherit the fan, didn't get to inherit it because the storm took the fan out. And that was the end of that story. But it was funny because we enjoyed having that big fan sweeping out those gnats. Y'all, it was terrible. Those gnats were in the windows and everything, and it was just something. But those were the good old days. When we had the merry-go-round, the children would love to get on the merry-go-round, and we'd all get on. And I was, you know, quite young then, so I'd get on there with them. Needless to say, I was kind of tiny, much tinier. Anyway, I got on there with them, and everybody wanted to get on, so we'd have to stop, you know, and we'd all get on and we'd go around and around. And after that, you know, we'd just be a ride and going on. So whenever they had anything to play and all that, I was the one that get out there with them. And the two other teachers that were here, and they were kind of senior ladies at that time, and I was the young kid on the block. And so they said, here comes Sister Betrayal. They called me Sister Betrayal, the flying nun. I don't know if y'all remember that story. But I would take the children, I'd have them out there singing, and we'd be doing all these games and everything. And they said, yeah, we'll give you about 10, 15 years, you're going to get tired of that. But to this day, I still like to do some things. We don't have as much time now because of No Child Left Behind Act. We have to be accountable for a lot more things now. And things are changing. And change is good. But the good old days were good as well. And we made a lot of memories. And the memories, I hope, will be forever in their minds, because I've had children come back with their families at Christmas time. And the young men would bring their families and say hello to me and introduce me to their families from all different places all over the world. And that, to me, was better than Christmas sometimes. That was my Christmas. You don't get a lot of money teaching school, but the memories you make with children will last you a lifetime. I've been at this school almost 40 years. It may not quite be 40, but I've been in the profession that long. I worked at other schools before I came to this school. So I've been teaching school since I was 19 years old. I graduated from high school when I was 15 years old. Back during those days, I did all of the first grade work when I was in first grade. I did all of the second grade work, and they thought third grade was a good place to start me. Needless to say, I don't think that way, because nowadays, you know, maturation, you know, I didn't have the maturity at that time, but I was bored with the work, so they passed me on to third grade. I started right about there, and I graduated when I was about 15, and I graduated from college when I was 19. Got my first job at 19. I was going to be 20 in November, and I have had a very good career. I wouldn't have traded for anything. I love it. I love children. I enjoy watching them learn. And Baldwin County is a very good county to work for. I've had support from the superintendents all down through the years. They were very, very kind to me. When I married my husband, I first got a job every summer. I was very fortunate to be able to work, and you know, and I love that. You know, all the superintendents, they always looked out for the Baldwin County people, and especially the young children who had just gotten out and needed jobs. And I was very fortunate to be one of those children. And to this day, I just feel like, you know, with the Lord's help, I feel like that all of the things that I've been able to do, I feel like, and I'm getting religious in this, I don't feel like I could have done anything without a higher power guiding me. So I'm very, very lucky, and I'm very thankful to have had this job and to have been here at this school and Alberta School. I was there. I was at Daphne School, the school where I graduated from the first year with my own principal, Mr. Carroll. And Daphne was a long way for me to drive. And my husband, I was always running a little late. And my husband always, he wanted me to be closer to home, so I went to Foley.
Summerdale School has played obviously a big part of my life. I started off here as a 6-year-old, and I just turned 50. And so I've spent 9 years as a student and 9 years as an employee. So 18 years of my 50 have been in this building, and it has been the best experience of my life, and working with these children and these teachers here is something that I'll always remember.